Drones Reshaping the Food and Beverage Industry. James McDonald is program chair at the School of Uncrewed Technology at Sonoran Desert Institute. Hi, James.
Hi, Robert. How you doing today?
Good. Welcome. Thank you very much for spending time with me here. James, where are we seeing drones deployed in in the food and beverage industry right now? What parts of the supply chain specifically?
Well, there's a few different parts. There are some fast food restaurants like Chick-fil-A trying to use them to see how they can offset waiting times in the drive-through orders. But, there's also companies like Google's Wing, essentially making full deliveries. Either they'd be eggs or, cans of soda or any other small food that they can essentially deliver. It really comes at a nice convenience because if you ever feel you need to run to the store for just one thing, well, now a drone can bring it to you instead.
Hmm.
But there are other companies out there working on, as far as the food space goes, larger portions of delivery and other potential capabilities to bring more than just that singular or few couple, things that you may be missing in the pantry to you. There's just some other additional components to think about there, such as, the size of the drone needed to carry these things.
Yeah.
Um, more groceries and such, and the areas that are available for them to land in, such as a backyard. So there's a lot of different considerations there as well as the existing rules and regulations. But it's been really great seeing the development of drone delivery over time in the last just 8 years, and seeing that more companies like Wing, like Drone Up, going
Mhm.
out there and making deliveries not just in groceries but in other small things too.
Yeah, I do want to talk to you. Let's delve more into the practicalities of it. But first, you said for a moment there, you said drones are in use in drive-through places like Chick-fil-A. I don't understand if I'm in a car driving through, is there a drone that's going to come out and
So think of like this. If like imagine that, that you're sitting in a drive-through, and the drive-through in and of itself is, you got a line going out back the door. It's a busy time, it's lunchtime. A
Mhm.
drone, essentially there's some possibility or analysis that you could do and say, hey, if instead of waiting for someone to either, or you get up to the window or even get out of the car and go outside, what if you
Mhm.
could just have this small thing just fly out your package to you, drop it off near or at the car,
Mm.
and then you can just get out of that drive-through line instead of having to wait another 45 minutes after, or 30 minutes after someone's already taken your order to get your order itself.
I see. Okay. So, as you pointed out, though, there are practicalities with regard to drone delivery to the home, depending on what kind of home you have. Do you
Yes,
have a
sir.
backyard? Do you have a front yard? Are you living in an apartment building?
Yeah.
That must severely limit where drones can actually operate.
It can limit depending on the type. And also, when we're talking about apartments, is there the fact that they have like a patio or some other place in the apartment building that could be delivered to? So instead of necessarily having to leave their entire apartment complex,
Mhm.
they could go out, just take the elevator, go a few floors down, walk out and get the delivery itself as well. And then there's also the capability for, the apartment complexes, or if you're talking about apartment complexes in cities that, normally have a front desk with concierges or people attending to the lobby, can go out and retrieve that delivery, and it would have the information, hey, here's who this is going to in the building, and that person could be notified when their delivery arrives, either by the
Mm.
person operating the drone for the company, doing the drone delivery themselves, or if it's just someone up front at that office. Or again, when we're talking about apartment complexes that may have like 3 stories to them, and they have courtyards or parking lots and things like
Yeah,
that.
okay. So it's got to have something like that. But I'm still wondering about the practicality of the efficiency of it. Generally, we're talking about one drone trip per order, right?
Mhm. Yes,
If you're a food outlet and you have, say, 20 orders, you don't have 20 drones sitting around. You have to wait for them to come back. You got to send them back out. It doesn't seem to me to be like a very efficient operation. It would take forever to get your stuff, right?
well, certainly not when we're talking about larger orders. Like, say, someone's having a big old pizza party, right? It'd
Hmm.
be a lot more efficient to use the traditional someone, driving a car out to get the pizza, the mass of delivery pizza orders to that specific party. But you're right, where when it comes to right now, at least with drones, when we're considering, what they can carry and the weight of what they can carry, and some of the, more technical dynamics of it, It's much more efficient to use them for, singular delivery items, because if you have to use a car for a singular delivery item, that's a human, that's gas, and so forth. There's a lot involved with that, where instead you could use a UAV to do that. But you're right. When it does come to those larger orders, like say someone has a grocery car on Instacart where they want to have 100 items delivered to them, that right now is still going to be much more efficient and done easily by, someone delivering it in a car rather than by drone. Because
Mhm.
I'm not sure about you, but even myself, even though I love drones, I would certainly get a little bit, maybe, I don't know, bothered by the all the noise coming in my backyard, coming
Well,
around being.
as would your neighbors, too. I mean,
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
can
yeah.
imagine neighborhoods would have a real problem with that as well. Now, as drones have developed technologically, and I do want to ask you about that in a moment, how have the regulations also developed? I mean, several years ago, the FAA was adamant, for instance, that you still had to have quote unquote line of sight to a drone before it, and there were limits as to how far it could go. It could not go out of the operator's sight. Certain corridors are absolutely out, especially those busy air corridors. Air traffic management is a problem. Where are we now in terms of regulation of drones?
That's a really good question. I was lucky to be involved in the IPP program back in 2019, where we were working with the FAA to, further study how we can incorporate the use of beyond visual line of sight, because that's where, in flight over people, because that's
Yeah.
where the realization, the true unlock comes for seeing drone deliveries more en masse. What I believe is being done right now, and what I was seeing done while in the program, was that they're allowing waivers to be approved for these operations for beyond visual line of sight, so that they can gather data from companies like Wing with companies like DroneUp that feed in flight operations data back to the Federal Aviation Administration. Federal Aviation Administration's main goal is overall safety of an operation. So as they allow more beyond visual line of sight waivers and additional waivers to drone delivery companies to be tested in these corridors, essentially they're, if we would say, feasibility test sites for these kind of operations, and they can assure that the rules that they set forward in these waiver approvals ensure a certain level of safety or a percentage of safety, not just in one location, but in multiple different flight operation areas and environments, that can turn into a more standardized rule set for drone delivery companies to follow for beyond
Mhm.
visual line of sight, flight over people, in the future. For example, quick one here. Flight operations used to be a waiverable operation. You needed to get a waiver from the FAA in order to fly your drone at night.
Mhm.
Now, because there were so many waivers and so many waivers with the same stipulations of what the operators had to follow who flew under those waivers, the FAA had enough information to essentially say, okay, we see that this standard rule set through the waivers is working. Now we can make it part of the Part 107 rules and regulations that commercial drone pilots have to follow as a standard.
Which means that night operations would be permissible within safety criteria. It
Correct.
would not require individual waivers for each flight.
Correct. And that has already taken place.
Yeah.
So no longer need to have flight waiver operations. It's part of the Part 107 standard rule set now.
What I am wondering, though, I mean, recent news about mysterious drones over New Jersey or wherever, whether there's some kind of a rational or otherwise, some kind of a public drone panic going on. People look up in the sky and think, "What is that? What kind of drone is that?" I don't, and could there be like a general public movement against the use of drones generally for that reason?
So that's a really good question. And there's a lot of different explanations to it, a lot of different parts to it. One is that as far as what's been announced, it was apparently there were flight operations, permissions given by the FAA to fly drones in the area or in the region where most of these sightings were taking place.
Hmm.
Now, in recent years, there have been, at least when people are saying they're seeing car-sized drones, there's a lot of different things it could be. One, general aviation aircraft. They're out there, they fly at low altitudes. But there's also in recent years been the development of air taxis. So air taxis are pretty large. They need to be in order to transport people through the air,
Yeah.
as a potential viable future service that
Yeah.
could be offered.
Very still much in the development stage, though. You're not looking up in the sky and seeing air taxis.
Yep. Yes, sir. Well, they are being flown and tested in controlled sites that I know of.
Right.
Uh, but as far as, when these reports start coming through, there are a lot of drone hobbyists. There are a lot of other drone professionals in the industry who, and then there's just hobbyists that maybe aren't in the industry at all and say, hey, I want to pop my drone up in the middle of the night and see if I can see one of the big things, right? And
Yeah.
so they have lights on them as well. They may look square, and that could be turning out by seen by somebody else to say, oh, it's another drone sighting. One of the other big things as well is confusing general aviation aircraft with drone aircraft. And that can happen
Mm.
a lot if you don't know the tools out there to use to do it, like Flight Radar 24. It picks up on the ADS-B transmission, which is like the location, the altitude, the exact GPS location, what kind of aircraft it is, to anyone. You can see
Hmm.
it. So it's a nice way to say, oh, wait, am I looking at a drone right now, or is that just a normal aircraft? Well, let's pull up this free app, take a look. Oh, okay, that is an aircraft.
Well,
That's
you'd
not a
have to
drone.
have that app handy
Exactly.
in order
Yes.
in order to do that. I'm also wondering, and this is not really necessarily related to drones, but again, it's that public perception problem.
Mhm.
The horrible air accident over the Potomac, a helicopter hits a commercial airplane, not a drone, obviously, but does it raise people's perceptions of the danger of overly crowded air corridors, and does that somehow translate into concern about drone operations as well?
It does raise perceptions. It does make individuals, it makes even professionals worried. Hey, we're seeing some of these things now. How do we keep safely integrating the use of uncrewed aircraft systems at a larger scale and
Mhm.
make sure that we reduce the possibility of that happening? That is the FAA's sole goal. Again, is ensure that the integration of these uncrewed aircraft systems, these drones, are done in the safest and most manageable way possible. That's why it may seem like the US and some operations are a little behind in comparison to other countries, is because we have a lot more active airspace. And
Yeah.
for that, we have to do a lot more testing and safety assurances in controlled environments or controlled areas before anyone can make a decision of, okay, here's how we do this going forward. There's a lot of testing, there's a lot of data that has to be included that says, hey, we've assured that doing it with this rule set or in this manner will maintain a good safety level. So yeah,
Mm.
incidents like this can create a negative perception or a worried perception, but also understanding that the industry, also the regulators involved in the industry as well, are always pursuing the most safest airspace that they can.
Hmm.
Of course, with a human in the loop, there's always the chance of incidents occurring. But as
Yeah.
long as individuals are trained, practice, I mean, being in the aviation industry, being in the UAS industry for the last 12 years, safety has always been the number one consideration in any commercial operation. So yeah, again, not to delineate any concerns that the public may have,
Hmm.
but there's always the review, the feedback, looking, okay, this happened. How can we make sure it never happens again? That
Right.
always
Well,
question that is asked.
okay. Summing up, despite all of the potential concerns that we have reviewed in these last few minutes, I mean, the very fact that there is such thing as a school of uncrewed technology, you folks there, surely you must feel some optimism about the application of drones in the future. So, what is, in your estimation, the future of drone technology in specifically the food and beverage sector? What kind of a role will it actually play?
So generally in the UAS industry, the role of drone technology in general, you see a drone and you see a tool. It's a tool that can be added into a multitude of different applications.
Hmm.
So really, it's not a matter of, if, it's the matter of when. And the more rules like beyond visual line of sight, flight over people are unlocked or standardized on a national scale, the more prevalent we'll see them become in uses and everyday uses in different applications, not just in the food and beverage industry, but especially when those kind of rule sets are unlocked at a national scale, it unlocks it at a nationwide scale, not just in those little corridors, but to every rural, town, every big metropolitan city as well, for those drones to be operated. Now, granted, the FAA does have a standard in place of saying, hey, if you're flying over this many people, you have to have this many thousands, hundreds or thousands of flight hours of without incident in order to even qualify to
Hmm.
fly locations like that. So again, it is not an if, it's a when, and that when, I would say, correlates to when current waiverable operations like BVLOS and flight over people become a standard rule set.
Okay. Well, James McDonald's of the School of Uncrewed Technology at the Sonoran Desert Institute. Thank you so much for taking this time with me to understand where we are in terms of drone technology and food and beverage industry and where it might be going in the future, and some very realistic appraisal of that topic. Thank you very much for being with me today.
Thank you very much, Robert. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.